Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 279, Healthy Habits in Times of Change with Dr. Pamela Fergusson RD.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talked to Dr. Pamela Fergusson RD about healthy habits in times of change. So whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, or you've turned 40 multiple times, wink, wink, you've been through some change in your life, and you most likely will again. And sometimes change is welcome. It's easy, but other times it could be extremely stressful. And it usually means that your routines or your environment is changing. So how do we keep our healthy lifestyle values in check? Pamela gives us some really great practical ideas because she knows. She's done it all. She's become a parent, adopted 3 children at once, moved across the country, and much more. We never know what our journey's going to look like, so get some great ideas now on how to keep things in line with what you want it to be when that change arrives in the middle of your life. And tag us on Instagram or Facebook at Plant Trainers when you're taking part in some of your healthy habits so that we could all be inspired.
Pamela is a registered dietitian with a Ph.D. in nutrition, and she has over 15 years of experience with changing lives through better nutrition. She's worked as a lecturer in nutrition at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine in the UK and Ryerson University here in Canada. Pamela is a member of the Dietitians of Canada leadership team, on Sustainable Food Systems leadership team, and the advisory boards of Balanced and Conscious Eating Canada. She's worked as a dietitian in North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia for organizations such as UNICEF and the World Food Program, and she's got experience in research and teaching as well as public health and clinical practice. She now has a private practice in British Columbia and loves to spread the message of plant-based positivity. Besides having a love for nutrition, Pam is a runner and speed walker who believes in the power of activity to help improve our mental and physical health. She eats a whole food plant-based diet and loves to cook and bake with her 4 children.
We want you to check your stash of supplements. What are they made of? While it's true that you can mimic a vitamin's chemical makeup and put it into a supplement, your body won't recognize it, or more importantly, won't assimilate it in the way that it does whole food sources of nutrition. We've both been taking Via Source for the last few months. It's got vitamin D and B12, so we gave it a try. We were completely impressed, even Adam, and it's harder to impress him. Our bodies recognize Via Source as food because it's made up from food. It's got a cup of sea vegetables, 20 plus nutrients, 2 cups of leafy greens, 2 cups of berries, and a lot more. While we're from the school of eat your nutrients, we also recognize that sometimes the body and the diet need a little extra punch when you're stressed, while you're traveling, or if your body's not in stellar condition.
Via Source has so many benefits. It supports cellular health, general nutrition, and wellness throughout the body. It's 100% vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, 100% plant cellulose capsules. So if you're going to take a multivitamin, this is the one to take. It's Plant Trainers approved. We have a link to information about Via Source and its amazing qualities in the show notes and at planttrainers.com/shop. Please check it out there and click on the link to book a call with Shoshana so that she can make sure that it's the right product for you and help you get your hands on some. And now for a moment of gratitude.
About 2 weeks from when this was released, my mom and dad came to visit us for a week. They spent time with our children. They helped clean up in the kitchen. They babysat. They talked with us. My dad did a house cleaning spiritually here, and I'm just so grateful that they were here to help us and be part of our life.
Yeah, it's always great when we can have family come in and help support us, and it's been a very busy time, so having them here was really an amazing thing for us, very helpful for the family, and I'm grateful for that too.
Pamela Fergusson, welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. We've seen each other lots living here in Toronto, and now you're over in BC. And I wanted to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and our listeners before we begin.
I do. So last night I sent my daughter Fern, who's 8, and she's our youngest. And I sent her to the supermarket by herself to get some limes for me. I realized I needed some limes. I was out of limes, and we were making vegan nachos. And just at the last minute, I sent her over there. And she did great. She got the limes, she brought back the change, and she was so proud of herself. And I just was grateful in that moment for all of the time we've had her as a baby and how much she's growing, and just grateful in that moment for seeing children reach new milestones and develop, and yet also just really holding on to the memories of them as babies too.
They definitely do grow quickly. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that your 8-year-old went by herself to the grocery store. How does that work? Like, is the grocery store next door to your house?
The grocery store is pretty close. She did have to cross a road. We always have been pretty progressive in terms of allowing our children to have certain freedoms. Even when we lived in Toronto, we would send our kids to the grocery store, usually 2 at a time, or to the park. They had to cross a busy street, and, we would practice doing that with them first, but we've always really felt that our kids would benefit from independence and really tried to give it to them in safe and appropriate ways. But, we were raised in the 70s, and I definitely went to the store for my mom sometimes and enjoyed doing it. And I don't actually think the world is a less safe place now. And so it's something that I want to be able to give some of those gifts to my kids, the freedoms that I had as a child. I want them to have some of those too, and let them feel like the real accomplishment of, she really helped me. I didn't actually have time to run to the supermarket. I was in the middle of preparing dinner, and it was a real help that she went. And I love it when kids can actually be part of the family and doing something that really contributes.
I agree that the world is not necessarily a less safe place. It might even be safer. I think that we've become really concerned as parents, which rightfully so, but we do need to give our kids that freedom. When our kids were younger, I used to park the car at the bottom of the driveway, especially in the summers when Adam's away for so many weeks. I used to park the car at the bottom of the driveway and let them play in the driveway. So, Russell was like 6 years old and Jordan was 4 years old. And I was always scared that the neighbors were going to call child services on me because I was letting them play outside alone. But the door was open a crack and I would keep peeking on them. But I would make dinner, and they shouldn't be confined to the house or the small yard just because I'm making dinner. So we're definitely with you on that they need to learn how to be independent and be taught. And really great things can come out of that.
I think that's really amazing because so many parents are helicoptering, they're looking over the shoulder every 2 seconds. And I think it's great to give them that independence as soon as you possibly can or feel comfortable enough to do so.
Yeah, I think so. I think every parent is different and different kids are different too. And I would never, try to say to a parent who's not comfortable with it to push their boundaries. But on the other hand, as much as you are comfortable, I think always building towards safe independence with your children. So it's not like something that she's never done before. She's gone to the grocery store with me many times, and I'll often get her to say, okay, now how would you go home from here? So that she's leading the way, that kind of thing, and talking through how to be independent. And we've done that with all of our kids. And so that they build towards being able to do it themselves.
It's great. And I think that there might be some parents or some people listening actually who are not parents yet, who might be judging or who might not be judging or who might say, I would totally do this too. But I think that until you're actually in that situation and you know who you are as a parent, who your children are as children and what area you live in, you really can't make that decision. And that kind of leads into what we want to talk about today. It's about making changes and staying healthy. And one of the first changes that happens either in a healthy or plant-based family sometimes is becoming a parent. And there's lots of challenges that come along with maintaining your healthiness or becoming more healthy as you carry a child or prepare for a child. So let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think are some of the challenges that people face as they become parents and staying healthy?
Too many.
Absolutely.
There's so many of them.
It's so life-changing becoming a parent. You go from where you're really just responsible for yourself and maybe, yourself and your partner, but your partner is an adult, they can function on their own. And if you're busy at work and can't get home for dinner, it's no big deal. They can make something for themselves, or maybe there's leftovers in the fridge, or they can order something, or they can do anything that an adult can do. When you have children, that completely changes, and you're now responsible for another human. And, I got to say that it did completely change my life, and in so many wonderful ways, but it definitely made things much more regimented. And I feel the weight of that responsibility, most definitely. It's a joy, but it really is an ongoing daily responsibility for the laundry and the food and, everyone's lessons and everyone's dentist appointments and everyone's social and emotional needs.
I was going to say emotional well-being. Yeah,
that's right. Absolutely. It's all the practical and all the emotional needs. It's the biggest job that you'll ever take on, being a parent. And you can't quit. It's a job you can't quit. And so but it's also the most rewarding thing that you'll ever do. And the thing that I think anyway, makes us grow most as people, being in family relationships, whether you have children or not, families are our most challenging and most rewarding place in our lives.
What about parents who are pregnant and, I remember saying, I can eat as much as I want, or I could eat whatever I want because the baby needs lots of calories, and, using that as an excuse, but also wanting to make good choices and not just eat whatever I want, but also making sure that I'm eating healthy foods. I know that a lot of people are challenged with time, with working, with being exhausted, with stress, but I think that pregnancy is really a time where you want to make sure that you're keeping to your good nutritional values, whatever they may be, and even making some better ones.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to say right off the top of the conversation about pregnancy is a lot of people do wonder, can you be plant-based? Can you be vegan and be pregnant and be healthy? And absolutely you can. It is a time where all of us need to make quite careful nutrition choices. That's not to say that you can't enjoy a treat now and then. Of course you can. But this idea, eating for two, so you can just eat whatever you want, is not actually healthiest for the parent or for the baby, and can potentially increase risk of complications with birth, or even increase risk for your child's health later on if mom gains a lot of weight during pregnancy. So the thing to remember is to continue to practice making healthy choices. If that is eating a plant-based diet or a predominantly plant-based diet, focusing mostly on the whole foods, lots of legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and, also thinking about activity. There was a study recently that showed 40% reduction in major complications for people who were active during their pregnancy. That's not to say it's a guarantee that if you're active, you will have less complications during birth, but it can help to prevent them.
I know that when I was pregnant, I didn't have the pleasure of being plant-based yet, and I was never a milk drinker. So what I said to myself is, I'm carrying this child. I need to do what's healthy. I've seen the commercials. I got to do my body good. And I started drinking milk for the first time in years and years. And my stomach did not react well to that. Within 2 weeks, I was in the doctor's office with complete gastro issues. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was a sign saying, this is not good for you. This is not good for baby. I'm giving you all the physical signs to make sure that you stop now. So what would you recommend would be like your top few foods for pregnant women to consume?
It's actually pretty simple because, the needs that we think of during pregnancy, we do have slightly increased protein needs because we're building a new body. And we have increased iron needs, especially in the later stages of pregnancy. Your blood is diluted, and so you need a little bit more iron in your diet. And you do need increased calcium as well. So all of us should be taking a prenatal even before you're trying to get pregnant, for 3 months before you even start trying to get pregnant, or even if you think you might possibly become pregnant, if you're trying but not trying. it's wise to take at least folic acid, or even better, to take a prenatal vitamin. And then you'll be taking it throughout your pregnancy, and you can continue as well while you're breastfeeding. So that will help, but you can also choose from whole foods that include lots of protein, and usually the foods that include a lot of protein also include a lot of iron. So things like pulses, that being lentils and beans, nuts and seeds are also good sources of protein. And also greens are sources of protein, but they're also very good sources of iron. So really think about beans and greens, and you can squeeze a little bit of lemon or lime on top of that meal in order to enhance your iron absorption. And those are also good sources of calcium. You can also add in some tofu, which is a good source of both protein and of calcium. So if you're choosing those whole plant-based foods and you're eating a variety of foods from across those different groups, being legumes, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, you really will meet all of your needs as long as you're meeting your calorie needs.
I see a lot of my own clients saying that they're becoming organic, or they're buying organic foods just for the baby once they begin to feed solids. But I think that what we need to do is put an awareness out there that while you are growing the baby, you're actually feeding them. So the foods that you're eating are being transferred for them. So that's all the positive parts of the food and all the negative parts of the food, as well as through the breastfeeding stages. Also, what you consume is being transferred to the baby. So I find it interesting that people start to go organic, or start to think more about what they're feeding their babies once they're actually eating solids, but it really does start a long way before that. What do you think makes parents want to become more organic or more plant-based once their children start eating solids?
Well, come on. I think especially with that first baby, isn't it? That it's just like, we just think, oh, everything has to be perfect for this new precious bundle of joy that's in my life. And they can never have any added sugar or any kind of, processed foods. And that those are wonderful instincts, and they're coming from a place of love and of protection and wanting just the very best for your child. And that is great. I think that for parents who don't choose that path, or maybe who can't afford that, I think that's also okay. I think concentrate on just really getting lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts and seeds. And it doesn't always, in my opinion, have to be organic. If you can afford organic for your family and that's something that you make a priority, then that's wonderful. But don't feel, if you can't afford it, or if that's not something that you've been able to make a transition to, don't feel that means you're not offering a healthy diet for your family. I think concentrate on making sure they're getting lots of whole foods. Keep processed foods minimal. You may be able to keep your children completely away from processed foods when they're very young, but once they reach school age, it's very few families who do manage to completely keep kids away from any added sugars or processed foods. And that may be something that you need to change and adapt to. And that's all part of raising your kids to make good decisions and to have values that include protecting their health and the animals and the environment of their own. So it's not just a household rule, but it's something that they themselves also buy into and value.
I think that, when you talk about the processed foods, the sooner children taste it, the more they're going to want it. So with our children, we tried to stay away from it as long as possible. Now if you see our Instagram and our Facebook, that our children will have donuts here and there. I mean, everything's vegan, and we try to choose the best ingredients possible, but we will go to bakeries. We will do those kinds of foods sometimes. But when I see a lot of the 1-year-old cake smashing, as cute as those pictures are, once that child gets that first little bite of like what cake tastes like when it's process, then it's hard to go backwards. So I would say hold off on that as much as possible. But absolutely right in terms of we can't all afford it. We can't all do it. But as long as we're feeding our children as healthfully as possible, that's great. But I think it's important to remember that we want to be as healthy as possible. We want to have as much energy and be in as good health as possible. So not just feeding our children healthy foods and making sure our children don't eat fast food and things like that, but applying that to the rest of the family as well, so that everybody can be as healthy as possible and spend your days in the park and playing with family and friends instead of in the doctor's office.
Absolutely.
We're taking a short break from this podcast to let you know that the holidays are coming, like you didn't already know. Don't get scared. Don't get nervous. Hold on to that steering wheel or bicycle handlebars. It's no emergency. But yes, the holidays are around the corner. You all have that loved one who's either started to exercise more, started to eat more plant-based, started listening to the Plant Trainers podcast, and kind of wants to show it all off. Well, we've got the perfect gift for them this year. We have our green Propelled by Plants SPF Ironman finishing materials sports tee and our gray Training for Life cotton tee. Sounds like a good idea, right? Well, I don't want to alarm you, but some of your plentiful peeps have figured it out already too. We're running out of sizes, so I suggest you order really soon. And did I mention that with every t-shirt purchased, we send out a handwritten letter and we also contribute to a compassionate charity. So if you have a special message, just send us an email to info@planttrainers.com and we'll be sure to include that in the package if you're sending it out as a gift. So get on it before snail mail becomes even slower by clicking the t-shirt link in the show notes or going to planttrainers.com/shop. And now back to the show. So you guys lost me when you started talking about pregnancy. I'm sorry, I just, faded out. But we're talking about change, and there's so many changes that parents go through, that people go through throughout their lives, that our kids are going through, from being infants to toddlers to young ones. And now your daughter's 8 and ours is 8, and things are still changing. And what I guess I'd love to hear is how the parents are coping with all these changes that are occurring. What are the types of habits that parents could be using or learning, or routines that they could get into that can help them manage these different stages of change as they come?
Yeah, and I think it is so important to look after yourself for many reasons. First of all, because just like that oxygen mask analogy that we've heard so often, to put your oxygen mask on yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup, all of those things that we hear, but they are true. We do need to, even in those really difficult moments with a new family, we need to make sure that we ourselves are looked after, that our relationship with our partner is not neglected, even if that just means taking a few minutes to take a shower and, put on some face cream. Making sure that not only the kids are getting a healthy lunch packed, but that also you're packing a healthy lunch for yourself, that you take a few minutes each day for some stillness, for some journaling, for some meditation, for some yoga, for a walk, or a cuddle with your partner, something that is not only about being in service to your children, but also being in service to yourself, and building up your own reserves so that you are able to approach parenthood with joy. There are some parts of it that are just hard work and can feel like drudgery. But parenthood is all about change. Things change all the time. Our youngest is 8, as you said, but our oldest is 15. And it's our job as we parent to create independent little humans that become much larger humans that are ready to take on the world and have something to offer and something to give. And, things will change, and whatever is very hard and very difficult in one stage suddenly will change, and there'll be a new challenge and a new reward and a new blessing to come with each stage. And that's what we need to remember. We need to take care of ourselves, take care of your partner relationship. I can say that's something I did not always do a great job of doing. We were really busy and overwhelmed. We have 4 children, and we adopted 3 children together at the same time. They're siblings. And it was very, very busy. And that was 6 years ago. And our kids then were 9, 7, 6, and 2. And, Dave and I, we're really just trying to just barely keep up with all the household chores and also managing the children. And we didn't have enough time for each other. And I would say that's a lesson learned, is to make sure you take time with your partner. You cannot keep withdrawing from that relationship and using those resources to pour into your family. You need to also make deposits and give each other back rubs and cuddles and spend time together. Get a babysitter or whatever you need to do to make sure that you continue to nourish that partner relationship and also nourish yourself.
Absolutely, because sometimes it kind of feels like two ships passing in the night, right?
That's right.
And of course, you're going to have periods of time where...
Especially when one's a morning person and one's a night hawk, right?
Am I hearing that that's something happening in your household?
No.
Well, I mean, and things happen, right? Like life happens also. We have extended family situations to deal with, and so there's going to be little pockets of time where, there might be a week or two where it's just a really rough time. But then, you've got to regroup and you've got to recalibrate and set your schedule again and put in those coffee dates in your calendar if you need to meet each other on your lunch breaks or what have you, to get it all going again, because the happy parents are going to mean, hopefully, happier children. But
Exactly.
So as a mom of older kids, as you mentioned, you have a 15-year-old. What are some of the challenges that you see? Because we do talk about the smaller ones all the time and how to make your family plant-based. Were your kids born plant-based?
No. So I was the one in our household to be the first person to go vegan. And then my husband did probably within the next 6 months or so after that. But both of us had been vegetarian for a long time in the past, my husband for even longer than myself. And so it wasn't necessarily such a huge shift conceptually, although it was a change in our diet. We did rely quite a lot, both of us, on eggs and dairy when we were vegetarian. And so to make that shift towards more fruits and vegetables, legumes was a change. I always loved fruit, but my husband was not a big fruit and vegetable person, and he really has changed and opened up a lot more in that way, which is great. And in terms of kids, it probably took us a year to transition our kids. As I said, our bigger kids, our bigger three, are adopted. They came from a traumatic history, and they already were undergoing so much change moving into our family that we didn't want to push things and change them at any speed that was faster than what they were comfortable with. So we really worked with them in order to make the change, and went really slowly at a pace that hopefully was comfortable for everyone.
And was that the same amongst all three of them at the same time, or did they each go at their own pace?
No, all of the kids, all four really transitioned at the same pace, although there were different feelings that came up or ideas along the way. And I would say in general, our girls were probably somewhat more open to veganism in terms of caring about the animals and being motivated by saving animals. The boys have probably been more motivated by, I just want food that tastes good and I just want lots of it. And so it's probably been more of a culinary thing for them. Our boys really love cooking. And so I think the main thing for them in terms of being on side has been to make sure that they like what we're preparing. And, food battles are often around control, whether you're dealing with a toddler or a teenager. Children want to control what goes in their mouth. So you really do need to recognize that and recognize their autonomy and let them have some choice in what you're eating. Now, that doesn't mean that they get to choose meat if you as parents have decided that your household will be plant-based, but they can maybe choose what recipe you're going to have or the pace at which transition happens. And definitely there needs to be lots of conversations about what you're doing. And we watched Cowspiracy with our older kids. Each parent needs to decide what they're comfortable with watching with their kids. And any documentary, I'd recommend you watching it first before watching it with your kids. But that was one we were comfortable watching with our kids, and it opened up a lot of discussion about the environment and about our responsibilities and about the future that we want to create and how living a plant-based diet is part of that.
So now that you have older kids, and we get this question all the time, you had a family who's plant-based, who's vegan at a young age, and you're controlling everything that they're consuming. But at some point, these kids are going to grow up and want to make their own decisions. And as a parent, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with them wanting to either try animal products, even though you don't do it at home, or are they going to stay that way forever? Do you expect them to? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, I don't think that anyone can decide anybody else's veganism for them. So I do myself identify as vegan, and that is a personal commitment that I've made. And it goes beyond my diet to also, what I would wear and not, enjoying any entertainment that involves abuse of animals, all of those things. But I don't think we can decide that for our children. We can raise our children on a plant-based diet, and we can buy them clothes that don't include any animal products, that kind of thing. And we can raise them with vegan values and talk about veganism. But ultimately, they will be making the choice for themselves whether they become vegan. I do think as parents, you can make rules about your household being plant-based. And, you are providing the food in the house. And I think that's what we do. What we buy for our children and what we prepare in the house is plant-based. But I don't make rules about what my children do with their friends and with their money. If they go and buy a slice of pizza or something with their friends, I don't ever tell our children that they must choose diet cheese pizza. And in some cases, they might choose a vegan option. And sometimes I know they don't always choose a vegan option. And to me being able to be light about that and to talk to them about how I feel and what the implications of choices are, but that ultimately it's their choice, to me that makes it more likely that they would ultimately choose plant-based options. Because as a teenager, I never liked being told what to do. But, again, each family will need to choose for themselves what feels right and comfortable for them.
And it'll come back to the values that you provided for them as they were growing up.
Yeah, that's what you can hope.
Yeah.
Or you could try reverse psychology and tell them to go out and spend their money on animal products and hope to God they don't. But I don't recommend that, everybody.
No, don't do
that. So as I mentioned right at the top of the show, you moved from Toronto to British Columbia just recently. So what are some of the challenges that came up and how did you overcome them in terms of moving? Because moving takes a lot out of you. It's exhausting. Your plates aren't ready. What kept you with good habits as opposed to going and buying, the fake veggie nuggets and stuff like that and putting all this processed stuff on the kids' plate for so many weeks?
Maybe they did. And what's wrong with that if you do that once in a while? It's
okay if you do that once in a while. I don't want people getting caught up in a rut in it. And I want people to have the tools and the tips to not do it. So I want to know what she did.
Well, let's find out.
So we do, even when we are in our established family situation and not in the process of moving, we do once in a while have, veggie nuggets or like order in a cheese, not cheese, but vegan cheese pizza. We do enjoy those things once in a while in our household. But, we do almost all the time cook with whole plant-based foods. And I would say in this transition, our diet didn't really change all that much. Other than the kids flew out to BC, but we drove. So we drove first. The kids were at camp. Then I flew back to Ontario, picked them up from camp, and flew to BC with them. And that drive, I've got to say, there were some dry areas in the prairies in terms of looking for plant-based foods. We used Happy Cow to try and find plant-based options along the way, but there were a couple of times where we just really couldn't find any vegan options. You can always go to the supermarket and get yourself some hummus and some carrots for dipping and that kind of thing. But, we did once in a while, we did enjoy a Beyond Burger from A&W along the way.
Before they ran out. That's why they ran out, because you ate them all.
That's exactly right. So we were lucky that was available, and we did enjoy that once in a while as we drove across the country. But once we got here, we were established pretty quickly in the house. And as I mentioned, we're very close to a supermarket here. So we were able to go out and just do a shop and get the lentils in and get the onions and the mushrooms and get all the staples that we usually enjoy. And very quickly, we were able to get back to making those kinds of foods. And, once you're in the habit of making plant-based meals, you have a repertoire of probably 20 different recipes that you use all the time. And I always post my recipes online. All my recipes are easy. If you've got 4 kids, you don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen. And so everything I make takes usually half an hour or less and is usually with really simple ingredients. And I just went back to making those same dishes that I always made in Toronto. And, we're really back mostly to our regular routine in terms of eating. And I think that's something to keep in mind with cooking is it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. And you can find what you need really in any supermarket. It doesn't need to be a really fancy, expensive store that you go to that has lots of vegan products. You can find the basics for really healthy vegan cooking in just about any supermarket.
Did I remember you saying, because we've sat on panels before together, did I remember you saying that you fed your full family for one whole week on $100 budget?
That's every week. That's every week. That's
every week. Right.
Yeah. That's around what our budget is. I'd say our budget's gone up a tiny bit in Nelson because food is a little bit more expensive here than it is in Toronto just because it's quite remote in Nelson. And also the size of the meals we're preparing continues to increase as we now have 2 teenage boys in the house. But we're probably still managing to spend around, say, $120 a month, maybe $125 a week. Sorry. Yeah. Again, the real secret to that is using lots of all of the healthy foods we talked about, potatoes and beans, lentils, grains. These things are not expensive and they are so healthy and our kids love them. And so that is the way we feed our family and what we rely on. And of course, they also get, nice fresh fruits and veggies. And once in a while, a treat like ordering in pizza, but we bake at home. So, we don't buy a lot of processed treats. We tend to bake treats for our kids. So like vegan brownies or vegan chocolate cake, and they get a small portion of that to take with them in their lunch to school. And that's how we do it. And that's how we keep our costs low.
That's wonderful tips for anybody who is in a family already or starting a family or is going through some kind of change in their life. Getting your routines down pat, knowing what to do, knowing where to show up, and knowing that sometimes it's really hard work and sometimes it seems a lot easier.
It's always hard work.
Well, it is always hard work, but when you get in a routine and you know what's going on, it's harder to cook a meal for the first time than it is to cook it for the third time. So once you have that experience, if you're going to move across the country or if you're going to, if something devastating is going to happen in your life, that's not the time to go start making new recipes. Count on what you already know. Count on what's already working for you. Rely on your extended family. There's so much that we can do to try to make things easier.
Yes. And a lot of those foods that we just talked about, they are easy to prepare in double portions. So, you can always make a double portion and put some in the fridge and use as leftovers, and you can be a bit creative with those leftovers. So it doesn't have to look exactly the same way the second time that you make it. So if you make, I always use the example of making vegan chili. I'll make up a big pot of vegan chili and then save the leftovers. I'll make it on the weekend, save the leftovers, and then use it as a filling for tacos on Taco Tuesday or on top of nachos, making vegan nachos with a homemade vegan cheese sauce. And, the kids love those things and they're getting tons of nutrition.
Yeah, we're big fans of batch cooking and preparing
Exactly.
for what's coming up. Pamela, you've got great tips, great information. If people want to reach out and connect with you, where would be the best place for them to go?
So you can find me on my website at Pamela Fergusson with 2 S's.com, or on Instagram at drpamela.rd, or on Facebook at drpamela.rd.
Thank you so much. We want to let everybody know that we will link to that in our show notes at planttrainers.com. And we want to thank you so much for your time and your expertise today, connecting with you. It's so nice to see that you're settled and happy there, all of you. And I'm sure that our listeners have learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Plant Trainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and a list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day.